Hello, my name is Yuri, and today we are going to be building a computer for a client. Now, this computer was it was done with a roughly $900 budget, so a little under 900, but it is basically meant for gaming and more gaming, pretty much. All right, so now, although me and the client did talk about what kind of games he's going to do, I went ahead and just built him an overall, what I truly believe would be good for, more than just gaming, although it is going to be optimized for gaming with minor overclocks and so forth. So let's talk about the parts that we went with. Alright, well, first and foremost, to get it out of the way, you have Windows 7 Home Premium 64-bit. As far as that goes, we're just going to get it out of the way and talk about that a little later. Next on, we got the Corsair CX600M modular power supply. Pretty much enough said about that one. Went with an Asus M5A97 Revision 2.0 motherboard. Now this was one of the tougher choices, as we didn't want to spend too much money on the motherboard. Again, this gaming computer did have a budget, so with keeping that in mind, some of the parts definitely had to be thought about as far as how much we were going to spend on it. But I truly believe this is going to be definitely a great addition. Alright, next on we have the beautiful G.Skill 8GB CAS latency 9 RAM modules. So of course we went with this one first and foremost because it looks amazing, but also it was one of the highest rated, and I personally have used these all the time. They have never let me down, and they work just as they are meant to work. All right. Over here we have, I don't know if anybody knows this, but an optical drive. Yeah, one of those things. I basically went with these because, we could just afford it in the budget. We got it, for a very, very cheap price, under $20. So we figured, why not, if the time comes, he might need to throw a CD in there. Plus, it makes it easier for me to install Windows 7. Alrighty. Now we have the hard drive. Again, a budget-conscious choice. Although 1 terabyte, I definitely believe will give this computer a lot of justice. Alright, definitely also definitely a good hard drive as far as gaming goes. It'll definitely do the job once again. Alright, now we have the CPU, or the Central Processing Unit, aka the brains of the operation. Yep, that's it right there. The little chip that's gonna do the majority of the thinking inside of the computer. Now we went with an AMD FX 8-core Black Edition processor. This one is a very high-rated processor, so it definitely one thing that we went with as far as choice goes. It was almost an obvious choice as far as this one goes. Could have gotten something better, but we wanted to, focus mostly on gaming, so therefore our next piece, as you've been seeing in the back, the motherboard, the graphics card. We went with a Gigabyte GeForce GTX 760 WindForce Edition. It's got 2 gigs of RAM on it. Beautiful card, and it is huge. Definitely will do what we need it to do without hesitation. Alright, as far as the case, another budget-conscious decision. However, a beautiful case for the pennies that was paid for it. This is the Thermaltake Mid-Tower Versa 2 case. Alright, as far as this one goes, it had all the features we needed. It had good airflow and good cooling. So, well, enough about the part explanation. What tools are you going to need? That is a question that gets asked a lot, and this is one of those things where people don't really even try building computers because of the fear of them thinking they just need too much and they don't have whatever they would need for it. But that's not true. Now, I use a little more than needed. I'm very maniacal in my builds, to say the least. So, there's a lot of tools here you're going to see, but all you really need is one. A Phillips head screwdriver. That's it. That is the one and only tool you will really need, although I do recommend you get, or at least have, nearby some scissors and some zip ties. No cigarettes. Do not have cigarettes anywhere near your build. Just saying. Alright, so one of the most important things as far as building a computer is electric shock. So you definitely want to have yourself grounded, whether it's going to be by touching the case periodically or constant contact, which is what I recommend, or just picking up one of these for mere pennies. Definitely very important. The only other thing you're going to need beyond this is going to be thermal compound. Thermal compound is basically, paste or glue that conducts electricity better between the processor and the heatsink. Now, we are going to go ahead and use the stock one that came with the AMD FX processor, but I always have some thermal compound nearby just in case I need to remove it or for whatever reason. Once again, I build computers all the time, so it's definitely good to have nearby. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the build as far as the what we're going to be putting inside this case. So part 2 is going to be, we're going to be setting up the motherboard. We're going to be installing the CPU or the processor into the motherboard, then the heatsink and the fan on the processor, and finally we're going to install the RAM onto the motherboard. Alright, so stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for watching. Alright, so this is part 2 of building a computer. Now in this part, first and foremost, we're going to go ahead and unbox the case. Now I do that for a couple of reasons, which I'll delve into later. But mostly we're going to be installing the processor into the motherboard. We're going to be installing the RAM into the motherboard, and then we're going to put a heatsink onto the RAM. Now later on, you will see why we had the case open, but mainly I just kind of have it sitting off to the side so I can keep eyeing it just to see, make sure have everything planned out. See where everything is going, just one of those things, an OCD that I really like to do. Alright, so, then on. Let's get this box open. And by the way, yes, I do use, well, actually it's a triple blade to open my boxes. Because I'm that badass, really. Just kidding. It's pretty much the only knife I had around, so I figured, why not? Badass people use badass knives. Whatever. that out of the way. Alright, so first we have, okay, that's rather weird. We have a big Ziploc bag with a little mini manual. Okay, well, get that out of the way. Let's finish opening up this sucker. Alright, so what do we have? Again, so we're using a mid-tower case for this one. All the dimensions worked for us, so in the budget, this seemed like the best choice. Alright, so let's get the screwdriver out just to see what's inside. Although, I guess it's going to be empty. At least that's what I think. That out of the way. Alright, so here we have it. So the only thing I particularly did not like in this case, right when I first saw it, is the fact that it only came with one fan, and it was the rear one. Of course, a very important fan. That one's to exhaust the hot air out of the case. Now, the other fan that usually is just as important, if not more, is the front case, or excuse me, the front fan. Of course, this fan is to intake the cold air so that it can go through the case and so that the rear fan can exhaust it. Alright, so as far as the case goes, once again, like I said, I just have this sitting nearby just so I can see where everything is going to go, how it's going to fit, while I work on the motherboard. Alright, so let's get the case out of the way. Well, actually, no. Let's do this a little different. Here's actually, to my point, another reason why I do have the case sitting nearby. Now, working with the next parts, it is crucially important to have yourself grounded so there's no electroshock going through whatsoever. Some people just like to ground themselves by constantly having a hold on something metal, such as the case. What I do, however, is I use a wrist strap, but I do ground it to the case. So that's another reason why I do have the case sitting out nearby. Definitely don't want to damage any of these parts. And this is about one of the only ways you can, unless you are just, you know, rushing through it and throwing parts around. Other than that, I mean, you can't really damage them unless you drop them. Alright, so let's find a good spot here to latch onto. There we go. And again, just anything metal works. Alright, so there we have it. Now let's get the case out of the way. Alright, let's get the motherboard open up. Let's see what we got here in the box. Alright. Beautiful blue theme, blue and black theme motherboard inside of an anti-static bag. Now this bag is going to be very important throughout the build. I will be using this to stop the shots while I work on my parts. So what else do we have in the box? First, you have your I/O shield. This is step one of installing the motherboard into the case. So let's put that nearby because we will be using it. You have the master user guide for the Asus motherboard, the driver and software CD, which we will not be using, and mainly that is because I prefer going online once I have Windows or whatever operating system you are installing. Once you have that installed, I personally prefer going onto their website and doing it that way, because if there is a newer update, I don't want to have to install it and then do the update, whereas I could have just done all that in one step. So that we're going to put aside. I don't like throwing it away, but I also don't use it. Next we have the mini user guide, basically explaining the exclusive features of this particular motherboard. And then we have a SATA mode notice, pretty useless here. Usually it's just going to explain the difference between IDE and AHCI. Don't worry about that, because by default, newer motherboards are going to be set on AHCI mode, so this is complete useless junk. Alright, so let's get the rest put up. Now, the biggest tip you're ever going to get with building a computer is keeping the manual of the motherboard nearby. Every motherboard is different. No matter how many times I've built a computer, I have had to look in here, and that is whether you are an expert or it's your first build. This is, again, very, very important to have nearby and to use it as a guide, of course. Alright, so let's keep that close in case we need to reference it for any reason. The rest we can go ahead and put up. Oh, sorry, oh, that's interesting. Separated from everything else is the two SATA or SATA data cables. They have a 90-degree angle, which is great. You'll see why that is important next on the build. But the rest we can go ahead and put up. We won't be using anything else in here. Although we will be using the box itself, I like to have the motherboard sitting not only on top of the electrostatic bag, but also on top of the box. And that is because when you are installing the RAM and the processor, you don't want to apply too much pressure to the motherboard, because there are pins on the bottom that you will bend and you will ruin the motherboard. So, again, make sure you're grounded, and let's get this motherboard out. Now, when you grab it, it is very important, again, try not to touch any of the parts. What I do is I put my finger on the back, I put it on the metal bracket on there or something just to safe, and then on the front, just anything plastic. I'm using the processor bracket as far as that. Alright, so again, put the bag right there, and the motherboard on top. Now, here is the motherboard. Well, although I wish it was a black background, it does have primarily brown, which will not be visible really at all. But, you know, like I said, I'm very maniacal, and I do things a very certain way. So what do we have here? Alright, to explain a motherboard. You have where the processor is going to go. Now this is again an AMD chip, and Intel one is going to look completely different. So keep that in mind. This is the rear of the motherboard. We have the PS2 plugins for the keyboard and mouse, the USB 3.0, the optical, multiple USBs, the gigabit, and the 8-channel or 7.1 sound inputs. Alright, the back doesn't have much, just the bracket that is holding what's going to be holding the heatsink. Here we have the PCIe 16 on top, the X1's here, and another one on the bottom, and then the regular PCI at the very bottom in the light blue. On the top right, we have the 4 RAM DIMM slots. This is one prime example of why you are going to be referencing the manual as far as the build goes, because every motherboard is different as far as where you install the RAM, and again, we're going to delve in that a little later. Alright, so really the only other things that I really wanted to kind of get out of the way is the SATA right here. This particular motherboard has a light for when the motherboard is on or on standby. Alright, so let's get that started. Get the show on the road and the fun part started. Alright, so of course to install the processor, we are going to need the processor. So let's get that opened up also. Alright, what do we have here? We have the processor, an AMD FX unlocked sticker. Now, the processor is in plastic right now, but you never, ever, ever, ever want to put your finger on the pins, never on the back, always hold it by the sides. And then we have a huge booklet here. However, it is only huge because it is in 365,958 different languages. Just kidding, I just completely threw that number out. Alright, and in this box, we have the heatsink and the fan. The fan's already on the heatsink, of course. So that's what's going to keep the processor nice and cold. You cannot have a processor installed in motherboard without some kind of cooling, whether you're going to be using the stock heatsink, only if you're not going to overclock it. Now, I just want to get that out of the way. If you are overclocking, I definitely recommend getting an aftermarket cooler, or if you're going to use water cooling. Alright, so let's get this box just out of the way for now, so we can install the processor. Now, to install the processor, this is, although it's a crucial step as far as knowing what you're doing, it is very, very, very easy. So, let's get this out. Alright. And again, never touch the pins, they are easily bent, and if you do bend one, you are going to ruin it. So here's a closer look of the processor. Alright. There you go. Again, it's an AMD processor. So, I'm not sure if you can see here, but every processor, whether it's Intel or AMD, has a little gold triangle on it, only on one corner. I don't know if you can see that right there, but it is right there. Now, this is to indicate where and how you're going to install the processor into the motherboard, because the motherboard also has that triangle indicating where it goes. Alright, so a very important part once again. What you're going to want to do here is just drop it in, again, aligning the triangles. For us, it's on the top right. So you're going to align the triangles, but you're just going to drop it in. You do not want to apply much pressure at all, if any, when placing the motherboard, or excuse me, the RAM. That is why it's called placing the RAM and not, sticking it in there. Alright, so let's get that out of the way. First thing we want to do is, there's a pin right here. We want to get out of the way. We want to open that pin. There we go. What that does is, it moves the plastic bracket that's protecting the pins under it. It opens them up so that you can install it. Alright, so let's go ahead and get that done. Drop it in. Proper position here. Alright, there you go. It's seated. You want to put the pin back, and now this part can be a little scary, especially if you're just starting out, but you are going to apply a good amount of pressure here onto when you're putting the pin back. That is to just get the processor in there very well. Alright, that's it. So the processor is installed. That's it. So the brain of the operation is in, it's done, it's ready to go. We just need to give it some cooling, and that is it. Alright, so next we're going to install the heatsink onto the processor. Alright. Let's get you a little better view here. That's a little better, just a little closer. Alright, there. So a little closer. A little more out of the way. Next, on to the heatsink. Although all heatsinks are different, they all have the same basis. The Intel ones don't have this bracket, which I'll explain here in a second. They basically you're just screwing them on there. But the AMD ones do have this bracket. This is to secure it on there, so you'll see how that's going to work. All right. On the bottom here, we already have the pre-applied thermal paste. So we talked about in part 1. Now there's a plastic cover here. Keep that on as long as you can, because again, you do not want to touch any pins, any of the parts, as little as you can throughout the whole build. So keep that in mind. There is a little radiator, aka the heatsink here, so you can bend those easily. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this started. We're going to go ahead and remove this plastic that I was just talking about. Alright, and we're going to get this installed. Let's see, let me get this cord out of the way. This is the cable for the fan that we're going to plug into the motherboard. Get out of the way for now. Alright, now how I install it is I have this cord always where I'm going to plug it into the motherboard. Because if I did it the other way, then I would just have more cable management to do. It would just look a lot uglier, so just don't do that. Alright, so let's get this put in. Again, you want to be very, very easy with this part. You don't want to over-apply any pressure. Here again, there's these brackets or pins on each side. You're going to want to install those very, very calmly. Alright. So again, don't apply any pressure, because again, we have a processor there. Make sure that the brackets go into the plastic pieces on the side. While both the pieces are aligned, that is also very important. That's what I'm doing here now, trying to get it aligned. What have we got going on here? Doing something wrong, or is this thing just not letting me? Yes. Let's start this over for a second. Let me try to get this side in first, and then work on this one. Alright, finally got it in. So I see what I was doing wrong there, and that is, I've done this so many times once again that I didn't even read the manual, but I'm sure somewhere in there it did say that the pin actually came locked. Definitely something that you should probably check out first, but my mistake. Alright, so then we're going to lock this back in. All this is doing once again is applying pressure. Just do it very slowly. Hold on to the motherboard so it doesn't slide. And click. That's it. It's installed. Now, this is one way you're actually going to be holding the motherboard. A good good way is actually by the heatsink, so you don't ruin anything. And again, as I was building that, I don't know if you saw, but I was trying not to push down on the motherboard and not to bend any pins on the bottom. Alright, so that's done. One thing I also like to do is wrap this cord one time, just so I don't have it in my way for the future. Alright, now we're going to plug this fan right here. We're going to plug it into the chassis fan socket on the motherboard. Now, every motherboard does have it written where you plug it in. I'm sure you can't see it because my camera's horrible. It won't zoom in. However, it is right there and it will tell you where it goes. So you're just looking for CPU fan. That is the input we're using. This is a 4-pin. Most of the fans that come with, or most of the connectors that come with the heatsink are going to be 4-pin. 3-pin will work here also though. So let's get that plugged in. That's easy enough. Alright, we're done with that. So next, we have the RAM. The processor is all done and so is its cooling. That's all there is for that one. Again, like I said, building a computer does not take a lot of skill. You do need proper knowledge, not even a lot of knowledge, but definitely proper knowledge, like watching this video and following closely. Alright, so in the RAM, we have a nice G.Skill sticker here. That's always good. Alright, so let me get some other stuff out of this way so you guys can have a better focused shot on what I'm doing. Alright, sorry about that. So now we can get out of the way. Alright, so installing the RAM. And I just want to mention one more time how beautiful this RAM is. Definitely goes with the motherboard very, very nicely. Alright, so let's get the RAM popped out. Now this is one of the, if not the single easiest thing to install into the motherboard, or actually for that matter, anything to do with installing a computer. This is probably your easiest step. Alright, so let's get this closer so you can see what I'm doing here. Alright, so on the motherboard, right here, in part 1, or excuse me, earlier in part 2, I briefly touched on this. Right here, you have where the RAM is going. Right there. You got black, blue, black, blue. Follow the user guide. Remember I said always have that nearby, just as I do, and after even doing this 500 times. Always have that nearby just so you can see where you're installing the dual channel RAM. Now, we're doing dual channel because there are 2 sticks. If you're doing 4 RAM sticks, well, you're just going to use all 4 of the slots. So as far as using the motherboard manual on that is not as important. In our manual, we were told to use the blue ones, which is sockets A2 and B2. All right, so let's get that done. First thing you're going to want to do is, there's these white pins right here that you want to click back on both the top and the bottom on all 4 of those. Alright, see that? Alright, and then there is a notch on the RAM here. Now, this is DDR3 RAM, so this one has it here. Only DDR3 here will work, although you don't need to know exactly what DDR3 is because you might be using other parts. Just know that when they went from DDR1, 2 to 3, where we're at now, they keep on moving this little notch for that reason, so you don't have any problems with putting the wrong one in. So align that little notch right there with the notch on the motherboard. It'll only go in one way, on one side. Right? Here you are going to apply a little pressure, and I really like this ram stick here again for this reason. It actually, on the side, it has two little flat spots where you can push down. Right? Whether you push one side at a time or both at the same time, doesn't matter. What I've learned over the past few years is some rams you push on both sides and it works better and clicks both of the little latches here, and sometimes it's just one side at a time. So just kind of get a feel for it and see how it's going. We're going to try with both sides right now. Alright, hold the motherboard up. Again, you do not want to bend the pins on the bottom, so this is about the most pressure you're ever going to apply on the motherboard when you're installing the RAM. Alright, we've got a click there on one side, so this RAM is actually one side at a time. And second click. That's it. You're going to do the same for the second one. For us, this is the last one. Also, try not to touch these pins here. Anything that's exposed, you don't want to touch if you can avoid it at all costs. Alright, so now that we know it's one side at a time, let's get her done. Alright, got a click on the left side and a click on the right. That's it. Make sure all the latches are properly secured, and that is it. We are done installing 3 of the parts. We're done with the processor, we're done with the processor's cooling, which is this heatsink right here, and we're done with the memory, or the RAM modules. Alright, so now in part 3, what we're going to do is we're going to install the motherboard into the case, and then we're also going to install the optical drive, the hard drive, and then we're going to probably go ahead and get the graphics card installed also in the same video. Alright guys, so thanks for watching. This was more of the one of the more important parts of the build, as we were touching the motherboard the whole time. After this, it does, I believe, get easier, although there is another part, and this is the part that's really just everybody fears. It's the part everybody hates, including any professional that has done this 1,000 times as I have, which is the cables, connecting all the cables. But don't worry, we will get to that. So stay tuned for part 3. Thanks for watching. Alright, so next up we have part 3 of building this computer. Now in this part, we are going to install the motherboard onto the case. Now, there's a couple points you must know, and this is particularly for this build, but it does apply for almost every other build I've ever done. One is that every case here is suited for more than just one size motherboard. We have an ATX motherboard, and you can also put a micro ATX motherboard in here, as you see right there. It says A is for ATX and M is for micro ATX. All right. So why that's important is because the motherboard never touches the actual case. It does not make contact. The back of the motherboard, that is, does not make any contact with the metal of the case, because again, of course, it will short circuit it. So what we're going to use is these motherboard risers that come with the case. Okay, so let's get this little baggie opened up and see what we got going on here. Alright, so let's see what's in here. First off, you have 2 little zip ties. Interesting. You have a motherboard speaker, as it is labeled right here. Sorry, had a little brain fart there. You can see it right there. Now, this speaker you can definitely go without. However, it is what is going to enable you to hear the beeps during post or the initial power on self test. That is when you first turn on a computer. All the parts are being checked by your computer, and this gives you an audible beep, as you see here in the speaker, that tells you what exactly that beep means. Now, again, that is inside your motherboard's manual. As I mentioned over and over, it is important to have that nearby, especially if you are just starting. All right, so what else we got in here? Okay, so just a bunch of screws, different sizes. You have these big ones here. There's only about 3 different ones in here, maybe 4. These are primarily for installing the fan into the case, or any fans into the case for that matter. Then you have the slightly bigger ones, which we are going to use for installing the motherboard into the case. And most importantly, as I mentioned a minute ago, the motherboard never makes contact, so therefore you are going to be used what's provided by the case, which are these little risers right here. If you can see it right there, there we go, a little riser. That is again to keep the motherboard away from not touching the metal of the case. It kind of props it up, which is, of course, why it's called a riser, or any other name that it goes by. All right, so our motherboard has 6 holes that we are going to use. Now in the case, you can see right here, we have a bunch of different holes, as I mentioned. Every case supports more than just one size of motherboard, as I showed earlier. And just to review our motherboard real quickly, we have 6, as I mentioned, and they are right here. We got first one right here, number 2, number 3, number 4 right here, number 5, and number 6. So you want to get those aligned with the risers I was talking about into the case. So go ahead and install these into the case first, and then we'll go on from there. So let's get started. And then if you haven't noticed, I got you slightly better view here. I moved the camera around a little bit. Alright, so let me put these away. We want to keep all these little things together, especially all the screws, so they don't roll around everywhere. You will be needing them. Alright, so let's put this case down. Actually, let's do this. Let's just keep it right here so you guys can see it better. I'll make it a little awkward positioning for me, but as long as it's better for the viewer, right? Alright, so let's get the camera over here. There we go. So again, let's install the 6 risers I was talking about. I'm sorry guys, again, I'm not using the best camera here, so you might not be able to see me putting them all in, but your case will be different, so pardon me on that one. I'll try to be quick. Alright, so this particular case is labeled where you screw the ATX in, as we talked about earlier. And these are, of course, as you can see, done by your thumb. Now, let me set this down. My position was a little awkward. Sorry about the view here, just for one moment. And again, your case will be different, so this is not a direct guideline. What I do is I use the finger measurement method. That's pretty much good enough most of the time. I go over here and I say, okay, so if it's this far away, the holes, I go to my motherboard and just make, double, triple check. And it is. So we now know which ones we're using. And continue just screwing all the motherboard risers in. 2 down, 4 to go.
Sorry about the lighting here. I know it's a little dark. We got an all blacked out case with black risers, which I love, but it's not always the best for the camera. Alright, 2 more. Stick with me here. And you'll actually be able to see me doing these ones. Alright, last one. Alright, so we got those in. Now, I just thought of something. I'm going to go ahead and do this for you guys so you can actually see. I'm going to take the other side, this side right here of the case, off. So you'll be able to see through it, but it'll also let more light in. So that's exactly what we want. Right. I'm going to put those screws aside. Do not lose them. You will need them to close back up. So let's get this side out of the way also. So let's see if this helped any. Oh yeah, it sure did. Alright. Got you a slightly better view here. Alright, so we have our risers installed. As you can see right there, and also right there. I know it's very tough. Let me try to see if I can focus. There we go. There's a riser right there. Alright, so now we're ready to install the motherboard. Now before we do that, there's another step here. This back panel right here, you must take this off first. Well, actually, no. Let's go ahead and leave that for when we do the graphics card. I think we have plenty of room in this particular case to leave that alone, and I'll keep everything isolated, part for part. Alright, so here is where the I/O shield is going to go. In this square right here. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. Right there. That's where the I/O shield is going to go. So as I mentioned in earlier in, I believe, part 2, we will do just that. We will do the I/O shield first. And that's, again, this thing right here. So let's get this bag opened up. So far, the only thing I don't like about this, these parts is, why is this white? I don't understand that. You know, you got a motherboard that's primarily black and blue, and then they just throw in this white one. Alright, so see these pins right here, guys? You can leave them here, you can bend them in. These right here, these pins that are extruding. But we're going to go ahead and leave them, and then if we need to move them one by one, we will. You'll see what I mean by that. So, how you install this is, to get you a slightly better view, hopefully that's a let me lay it down actually so you can see it. There we go. So we're installing it right here. Now you want to go from the inside. Right? You want to come from the inside, and first, actually, look at the motherboard, right? And you want to make sure that you're actually going to have this, proper alignment, right? So let's get that done. From the inside, as we measured our alignment, we're going to pop this in, and by pop, I actually mean pop it in because you will hear a couple pops right there. Nothing difficult here. There we go. And just make sure it's seated properly, or else the motherboard will give you a hard time all over this little simple I/O shield, or the in-out inputs. Alright, so as you can see, we got that done there. There we go. And then we are going to put in the motherboard. Another crucial step I'm going to tell you is you definitely want to, when you're putting the motherboard in, as always, not touching anything but the heatsink or whatever you're holding it by, whether it's this or these pieces right here, the plastics over here, doesn't matter what, just hold it by that, and you're gonna put it inside. You're gonna go first, you're gonna come down, and then you're gonna kind of at an angle, you're gonna make sure that these right here, these inputs and outputs, all fit in with the shield that we just put in. All right, so this might not be the best view for you guys, and I'm sorry, but let's go ahead and get that in. I feel like I explained it well enough for you to understand what we're doing here. And of course, it's going to sit on the risers that we installed earlier. Simple as that. See how everything makes sense? So let me try to get you guys a slightly better view. All right. There we go. All right. So it's going to sit just like that. All right. These cords out of the way. And let's install it. When you're putting this in, make sure you are aligning all of the risers that we installed, and make sure your I/O shield and your motherboard is aligned. That's probably your best way, actually, to know that everything is in. All right. Now, in our case, just a couple of the pins had to be moved, but it looks like we got proper seating now, as you can see right there. And everything's seated. And here is also another crucial part. Double check that all the risers are leveled with the motherboard. You might have to hold a little pressure onto the motherboard once you screw in the first one or two screws. All right. Now the screws we want to use are ones with the spacers already on them. These right here. All right. So again, they're in our motherboard. We have 6. Now, this next step, this next note, will go for the rest of the build. When you are screwing anything in, you always want to do it diagonally. So, for example, when you put this first screw on the top left, screw it in, just not all the way. That's important. You don't want to apply too much pressure at any one point. Nonetheless, you're going to screw it in just lightly, just to hold it, and then you're going to go to the bottom right, then you're going to go to the top left, top right, and so forth, going diagonal, and that's also how you're going to screw it in. Now, again, that goes for everything, not just this motherboard step. That goes for the optical drive, the hard drive, and anything else, fans, whatever. Because, again, you don't want to apply too much pressure on any of these components. All right, so again, sorry for the view. This will only be temporary. Now the screwdriver I'm using is magnetic. A lot of people used to say magnetic, it hurts, the motherboard, this and this and that. No, not really. I mean, you don't want to, scratch it up or drop the screwdriver, but I've yet to have a problem with using a magnetic screwdriver. It's done nothing but just been a savior to me. It's helped me a lot. A tremendous help. Alright, so let's get that going. Let's see if we can get this first one in. Actually, we're going to do this first one on the bottom. And again, do not screw it in all the way. Just, get it in there enough where it's holding it so you could do the rest. Because you're applying just a little bit of pressure to the motherboard on the side of it to have it sit properly. Alright, so we got that in. A few more. Second one, and again, we're going to go to the top right now because we just did the bottom left. So now we're going to go to the top right over here. Let's change the view and see if I can actually get you guys a view on this. There we go. It's a little better. Hopefully. There we go. Alright. And I'll lift it up here in a minute. It's just very hard for me to do it while giving you guys an angle. This is the toughest one for me because there's not much space to work with, even for the screwdriver that I'm using. Alright, but I think we got it in. Alright, so this is one of those parts. I said I have other tools laying around, like a smaller screwdriver. Also magnetic, of course. Come on now. There we go. Back to the big one. And as you're doing this, keep checking on all the other holes. Make sure the rest of the motherboard and all the holes are aligned with the risers that we installed into the case earlier. If you want to have that figured out first before you screw half of them in and realize you don't. We happen to. Alright, next. So again, there are 6 of these. Why I'm having such trouble
one screw, but I am. Some things just don't like me. But this screw will get over it. Screw the screw. Screw you, screw. Aha, once I told it to screw off, it started to screw in. There we go. And check that everything else is seated properly. It is. And let's get that one also in there just by a little bit. Let's get a smaller screwdriver here. Not much space in this case here. There we go, that one in. Alright, 3 more to go. Okay, going diagonal from the last one we did. We just did the top left, so now we're going to do the bottom right. From here on out, you don't really have to apply much pressure to the motherboard anymore. The other 3, now 4 screws kind of do that job for us. The bottom right, now we do the middle one. And uno más. One more to go, and that's the top right. We're going to switch to a smaller screwdriver here. Because again, the top here does not give me much playroom. Alright, so I guess that one liked me. So double check you have all 6 screwed in now. And you just go over them. And tighten them up a little bit. Once again, you do not want to over tighten the motherboard. You will break it. It is not a very thick piece of board. So go over, and again, yeah, I've mentioned this multiple times and I will again, go diagonal when you're screwing it in. Alright. Okay, so again, do not over tighten. Motherboard is not going anywhere. If you hear clicks in this step, multiple clicks, that's okay, as long as, of course, it's not a bad crackling one. That just means that the motherboard is just sitting down properly. Alright, so we're done. Got all 6 of those in, got the motherboard installed into the case now. Alright, there we go. Whoop-ha.
So for now, I'm going to put these screws that came with the case aside, just so I have more room, so you guys can focus on what I'm actually doing instead of the other little things laying around. Although there are, you are always, well, at least every time I've bought a case, provided many extra screws, you still don't want to lose any. You never know. You know, with at least my luck, I'll lose one screw out of 100, and it'll be the one that I needed. So, alright, so let's get this put aside. Alright. Now, so we got that done. Change the angle up here for you. There we go. So, as I mentioned, the motherboard is now seated inside the case. Alright, the I/O shield is done. So for the most part, we're done with the motherboard for now, as far as, you know, handling it. Now, we are going to install basically the part that this computer is made for. And wouldn't you have guessed it? That part would be the graphics card. Dun-dun-dun. Alright, you gotta check out how nice this one is. If you haven't seen one of the new 700 series graphics cards by NVIDIA, or NVIDIA's cards, this one in particular is a Gigabyte branded one. You can see right there. And as I went over earlier, it is the WindForce Anti-Turbulence Cooling OC, which is overclock version. It is slightly overclocked, but factory overclock, that is. Overclock Guru 2, which is a software inside of Windows. Now this is new. Although UEFI is which is a newer form of BIOS, where basically for what all you need to know, you use the mouse now instead of just the keyboard. Now you could do it inside of Windows. You could do an automatic overclock or a manual overclock. Alright, so this card, as you can see right here, has 2048 megabytes of RAM, which is 2 gigabytes, of course. 1000 megabytes is a gigabyte. Pun intended, gigabyte. Haha. Alright, so let's get this opened up. Gotta see how cool this is. Look at how big that thing is. Big enough for 3 fans at least, huh? Alright, so what do we have here in the box? Card out of the way just for now. Good. There we go. Alright, so the first thing you see, and for some reason this is the first thing I always see, which is the most pointless thing that they provide. This is a basically an adapter cable to a Molex, which is a 4-pin. Let's see if I can get you a good view here. There you go. It's a Molex plug from a 6-pin. Again, we won't be using it, and we'll go over why. For the most part, our modular power supply over there, you can see it in the corner, is going to have everything we need. I don't think we're going to need many adapters, but again, don't throw these away just to throw them away. Just kind of, you know, keep them in the box. Alright, speaking of the box, there's only 2 more things in here. You have the quick guide, which for graphics cards usually doesn't show you much at all, you know, as far as the installation. You got this picture right here, which is all you're going to need to know, which I will explain. You have no idea how easy it is to install a graphics card. And just a diagram of what connections this particular graphics card has. VGA, which I have no idea why they still do that. I guess like most people still, well, a lot of people still use it, but you should probably be using at least a DVI, maybe an HDMI, if you're going to be running a graphics card like that. You got DisplayPort, DVI-I, and DVI-D, which is digital only, or analog and digital. Mini HDMI, and mini DisplayPort. Alright, so enough of that. Let's get this out of the way. Remember we talked about the CD with the motherboard? Same thing applies. We're going to install the drivers and all the software from the website, in this case being Gigabyte's website, because I want the newest version. I don't want to have to go through it over and over. Although if this is your first build, I guess I do recommend using the CD if you're scared of going through doing it manually and finding your own drivers to install on different websites. All right, but as far as we go, we're gonna go ahead and put that aside. All right, so that's it. That's all that's in the box. Let's just double check that there's nothing in this or under this. Excuse me. Nope, empty box. All right, that's it. Just a lot of black foam. Throw that in there. And let's get this the hell out of our way. Pretty happy with the packaging so far with all these parts. Pretty interesting. This computer is not being shipped. I am building it locally, or for someone local, that is. So we are not worried about putting the boxes in any particular order. All right, so I don't know why I grabbed that. Let's get these graphics card out of the box and check out how awesome it actually is. I just remember just 2 years ago, these graphics cards, I mean, they were probably this small, if that, maybe even smaller. Now, look at this thing. It's a little over 12 inches. That's incredible. All right. So this is the back side, or for when you're actually putting it into the computer, this is actually going to be the top. It's going to sit just like this into the case. Now this is one thing I've always wanted them to improve on. Although they do sell back plates, they are not needed, but it's for looks. I mean, I guess it helps with a 2 to 3, 1 to maybe 3 degrees at keeping it cool. The back plate, that is. But this is how you're going to see the graphics card inside the computer, just like that. Right? You got the ports out here. You got the HDMI right there. Right? You have the display port right there. You have the DVI, I and the DVI-D. Alright, so for now we're just going to go ahead and cover which one we are not using, which is going to be the display port. We're not worried about that right now. We're not using it. Just to keep the dust out, I guess. We're also not going to be using the HDMI. We are going to be using, well, actually, my client is going to be using the HDMI. Sorry about that. But we can cover the rest, the DVI-I and the DVI-D. Alright. I just took those off to show you what we're working with. Alright, so definitely a beautiful card. I mean, you got to see this thing. Look at this. Beautiful, beautiful card. I like the sticker that they put on it. Changes to the light. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Clear fans. And you can actually, if you look inside, you can see the heat sink and the copper heat pipes that's going to keep this sucker cool. It is called the WindForce, so it better have at least one fan, right? Alright, so to get the graphics card installed, very, very, very easy. Alright, so real quick, just to finish going over it, right here, you have the SLI bridges. We will not be using those at all. So whether you keep this plastic piece on there or not is up to you. Personally, depending, like for example, I usually do take them off. But, and this is just going to be funny for you, we're going to keep it on only because it's blue. Like I said, I'm very picky and very particular about colors and aesthetics. So we're going to keep them on only because it's blue. No other reason. Keep that in mind. Alright, so let's get the graphics card installed. This is pretty much just as easy as RAM, getting RAM installed. Just as easy, nothing to it, nothing to be scared of as far as when you're upgrading. Now, most of your newer ones are also going to have a little cover right here. You definitely want to take that off first. Alright, so we got that off. So, use the anti-static that came with the graphics card anytime you're putting it down. Alright, and let's install this into the case.
Alright, again guys, I will be laying this case down. It's much easier and safer for it to be laying down when you're doing this. You are going to, again, apply a little bit of pressure here. Alright, so as I mentioned earlier, this is how we're installing it. This part right here is going to come out of the back, right there. Right? So, first thing you want to do is, right over here, let me show you on the case. We were actually dove into that a little earlier. Right here, see these covers? I know it's dark, guys, I'm sorry. But these covers over here, you're going to take, first measure it out. Some graphics cards take 1, some take 2. This one in particular takes 2. So we're going to take the top 2 out. In your case, so for real quickly, we're going to be installing it into this right here. All right, let me get you a slightly better view. All right, so this navy blue one right there, that's where we are going to be installing the graphics card. That's the X16. That's the fastest speed one, the fastest PCIe X16. So that's where we're going to be installing it. Now, measure everything out first. You don't want to just start throwing things in there. So measure everything out. Now, of course, we already measured and know that the card fits. What I mean by measuring is make sure that we are going to remove the proper amount of brackets back here and everything. So let's see what we got. All right, so perfect fit, good to go, and yeah, we're taking off 2. So let's do that real quick. Again, setting the graphics card on the anti-static. Let's go ahead and remove 2 of these brackets in the back, right there. All right, so you're doing it from the inside, right here. Now this is going to be extremely hard to see. I'm sorry, guys. I'll try to show you, but there is a screw right there, and we're going to take it off. This is part 1 of the very minimal parts of installing a graphics card, but definitely the first part. Alright, let's get this out of the way. There we go. That's what we removed, guys. Alright, now the second one. This one, interestingly enough, in this case, is not one that we unscrew. This one kind of just pops out. So let's do just that. Let's pop it out. There we go. So there's the second one. All right. Put it aside, and let's put the graphics card in. All right. So you will see first and foremost that right here. We are going to be coming out and putting it in just like this. Right? So there we go. That's how we're going to be doing it. Now, in our case, I do want, again, I mentioned that this one right here, they are different, the bottom. And again, this is just for this case. See how one is covered, one isn't. I will repeat. I am very particular, very specific on how I like to do things, and I will spend a couple extra minutes just to do so. We're going to put this one back in instead of one of the flat one that we went over, this one right here. We're going to put that back in, just replacing one of them, because I feel like why not? The other one gets popped off, so after you take it off the first time, you're never really going to go back to it. But the one that has holes, you never know. You know, for example, if you're installing a sound card, which, by the way, you would install into one of these slots right here, depending on the sound card, the PCIs or PCIEs. This is how we will be installing the graphics card. Right there. Alright, so I'm done replacing it. Now we're gonna, what we're gonna do is one more. There we go. Let's get one more out. Now, let's do this. Alright, once again guys, I will be laying this down just for a quick second. It is much, much easier to install a graphics card when the pressure is going down instead of me having to apply the pressure down. So let's get that installed. Hopefully you can see something. There you go. We're just lining the back up right here. And we're inserting it into a slot. There's a little latch that you're going to pop off on the PCIe slot that I showed you earlier and talked about. So we're going to pop that off. And there is a little notch on the graphics card also here. Let me show you that actually before I continue. It's right here. See that? You're going to match that up with the card. And the little notch I was telling you about while I'm at it is this thing right here. So you want to pull it back first, and then you're going to snap it back in if it does not do it automatically. Alright, hopefully you heard those snaps and clicks and pops or whatever you want to call them. That is the graphics card being seated. And don't be scared about that one. The latch did go in by itself. Now make sure it is seated very straight, and the screws that we took off with these brackets right here are actually going to hold the graphics card in more and keep it seated with a little more pressure. Now, because we popped our screws off, or excuse me, our brackets off, we are going to have to dig into our bag and get 2 more out for the brackets, or excuse me, for the graphic card. Just 2 more. While ensuring the graphics card is as straight as can be, go ahead and screw those back into the side. Again, this is you definitely want to have this part done also. It is very important at keeping everything straight. That screw doesn't want to work. So let's get a slightly bigger one. I think that's what it really wants, a slightly bigger one. There we go, that's what it wants. So like I said, guys, keep those screws that came with the case nearby. Just as I've been doing. Everything is on a trial and error basis. Alright, so again, don't screw it all the way. You don't want to over tighten anything in this entire computer build. Let's get the second one in there just in case. You never ever know. Especially if you're shipping this, you definitely want to have this all the way, you want to make sure everything is done very concretely. If that's a word. If not, then concretely now is a word. Officially. Alright. So go back and tighten them. Alright, so besides plugging the cables in, just like we have to do for many of the other parts, our graphics card is done, guys. There it is. That's it. Bam. So there we have it. The beast of this build is in. There we go. So, like I said, you have the PCB board on top. That's how it sits. You can get a cover over it. Actually, let me show you. I do have one nearby. Show you what that looks like. Although it does not really help performance. Again, it'll help you 2 to 3 degrees, but not much. I just happen to have one laying around. It's right here. You can actually sit and cover that up just for looks. Just like that. Again, we're not going to be doing this in this build because this is for a whole different one. Alright. So, pardon that segue. Just thought I'd, since this is a learning video, I thought we would do some edumacation. Alright, so, graphics card's done as I mentioned. Welcome back to part 4 of the build. Alright, so in this part, we will get into installing the hard drive. In this case, again, it's a 1 terabyte Western Digital Blue. I live by Western Digital. I'm not a fanboy or anything, but I do prefer them over pretty much any other brand. They've never steered me wrong. You know, we all know about hard drives crashing and all, but I've had the best track record with Western Digital. So that's what we're going to be using. All right. Next thing we're going to do in this build is install the optical drive. One of these things that we went over in part 1. Now this, a lot of people are starting not to even put in their build, but again, it's something that we want to throw in because it's dirt cheap now. And from then on, we are going to do our cables, our wiring. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier in the videos, this is the part that scares people the most, you know, because it does look a little fierce here. But it's not much, you know, we'll get into it. It's really linear, you know, step by step. You'll be able to get it done, no problem. All right, so let's get to it. First, we'll do, in order, we'll just go ahead and do the hard drive. Now, if you guys haven't noticed, the only wire I've actually connected is the actual cable right here for the fan. The heatsink fan, right there. That's been the only cable that I've actually done. And now some people, and I do get, you know, I get beef for this once in a while. People complain that, you know, I should just do all the cabling as I do each part. Like, for example, if I install the hard drive, why don't I just go ahead and connect the hard drive? Well, the reason for that is I build in a very OCD way, so my cable management is just as important to me, and I mean it should really be to you too. It's really good for airflow if you have it out of the way. So nonetheless, we are going to install the parts, and then we're going to do our wiring, which is not as scary as it seems, I promise you guys. And I apologize, there is one thing we forgot as far as the wiring goes. We're also going to install the power supply. Now, I do the power supply last. Just, you know, it makes the case heavier because as you've noticed, I turn it and spin it and turn it all the time. So, thought I'd mention and not forget the power supply. How else are we going to get everything powered on, right? All right, so there goes my rant. All right, so let's open up the hard drive. Oh wow, this thing is, seems like it's one of those things you just pop out of place, but it's actually glued on there. See? See what I mean? It's glued on there. Alright, so, nothing a triple blade cannot fix. So what we'll do here is we'll just outsmart the thing. Yeah. We're just going to outsmart it. How we're going to do that is also a good question. All right, I'm just going to cut along the bottom, of course. Yours might not even have this type of cover, which is kind of why I'm pretty much doing it off camera. Alright, so we got that part done. Let's put away this massive knife. And let's get the hard drive out. Now we can tear this box apart, as I've pretty much already done. There we go. Alright, we got the hard drive. There we go. Boom shakalaka. The only thing in this packaging is a little piece of paper with, you know, saying solid performance and everyday reliability for computing. Well, yeah, I'd hope so. Get that out of the way. Alright, and of course you see it's in another electrostatic bag. Now this, the hard drive is pretty important as far as keeping it in there, so I always use the bag, to put the hard drive on top of. The other thing is you don't want to set it down, very hard. Just set it down lightly when you do. It does have a hard disk in there, hence the hard disk drive that it is. Now with SSDs, which we are not using, that is going to be a future upgrade for this particular build. Sticking with our budget is just something we could not do, although we are going to. So yeah, don't throw the hard drive around. It's actually more susceptible to being broken just by setting down hard over the static, but always better safe than sorry. Right. Be grounded as always. Let's get it out. And let's put it on a anti-static mat. So, again, this is going to depend on the case, but it's always the same, same concept. Here we have the hard drive. There's the top or the bottom, however your case is, usually the top. And here's the bottom, as I mentioned. And then you have these pins right here. And the only ones we're going to use is this long dash right there, which is the SATA power, and then the SATA data, which is right here. Notice that little L-shaped latch here and here. That is so that you can only plug it in one way, so foolproof. Once again, another reason why I say the cable, as far as wiring things and all the cabling, it is not that hard for the most part. It is step-by-step, very linear process. Alright. Let's get you a view on this. Let's move the case a little bit so you can see this better. There we go. Alright, so what we're going to do here is this. We are installing this hard drive into the topmost part of the case. What I mean by that is this. Right here is for the 5.25 inch, 5 1/4 inch optical drives. This part right here that ends right along this line right here. And then this smaller section right here that goes all the way down is where we're going to install, in our case, hard drives, but you would also install SSDs and so forth in there. How it goes in, again, this part with the wires, you want it coming out like this. Give me 1 second, I'll show you. Alright, just like that. So it's going to go in. There we go. It's going to go in, and this is going to stick out this way so we can, connect our cables over here. Now this right here, do not worry about. We're not using. And if you're a novice, it's better you don't even worry about it at all. So, let's get it cracking. Get you guys as best of a view as I can on this. There we go. Alright. So, as far as the hard drive, you do not get screws or anything there. So you will have to be using the ones, once again, that came with the case. I told you guys, keep these around, and we will be using them. This is going to, as far as which ones, is it going to be the ones with the spacer already installed, or the smaller thread, bigger thread? That's going to depend on the hard drive. So one thing I always do is grab the screw that I think it's going to be. Again, I do know which one it is, but this is for you, not me. So we're going to just test it out. By the way, that's where the screws go. 1, 2, and 3, 4. Now, this hard drive has 3 different ones. It also has some at the bottom, because some cases have it different way. You can mount them different ways. But our case, as you can see over here, has them on the side. You got the holes on the side. So, anyways, back to making sure that this is the right screw, and it seems like it is. Just to double check it. It seems like it is. Alright, so we found our screw, so hopefully you have yours. If not, then you're going to be left behind.
Alright, let me get these wires out of our way. Just like so. There we go. And let's get the hard drive installed. We're just going to put it at the very top. Actually, you know what? Because of how big our graphics card is, if you could see it right there, although I could put it in, this part right here of the graphics card, the very back, this right here, the plastic, is actually not allowing us to be comfortable with it. So we're just going to put it one lower. As I mentioned, you could put it anywhere you want. But anyways, slide it right in. It should go right in. And line up the holes right here. Right there. Line up. See that? When I move it. There we go. So 1, 2, and then 2 more on the back of the case. Alright, so once again, we are going to screw it in diagonally. Here it's not as important whatsoever, but why break the pattern if you don't have to, right? Most important thing here is just don't be slamming the hard drive and screw them in calmly. Okay, 1, 2, and on the back of the case, 2 more. We got number 3 right here. Let's get a screwdriver here. Got awkward positioning once again. This is another time where a magnetic screwdriver helps a lot. So we got the 3rd one in, and the 4th. Alright, when you're done with the 4th one, just go ahead and screw them in a little tighter. Do not overscrew these either. Depending on the screw, it will cut through all the way to the hard drive. It's happened before. I've done it before, and I've heard it happen plenty of times, enough to just not overdo it. Alright, got that side, and then go back to the initial side we were working on. Alright, so as I mentioned earlier, I do the wiring afterwards. So as far as I'm concerned, we're done here until we get to the power supply and the wiring phase of building the computer. Next, we're going to work on this ancient fossil, the optical drive. Again, this is not really susceptible to shock. It is more susceptible to you throwing it around, because it does have moving parts such as a spindle, just like the hard drive. That's where a solid state differs. You can pretty much throw those around and those will be fine. Actually, you can do whatever you want with solid states. Nothing happens to them. They are beasts. Alright, so there we go. There's our optical drive. We went with an LG Modisc Super Multi-Drive for one reason only, and that is, well, 2 reasons. One, it's a black frame, like 99.99% of them, and of course, it was sub $20. Alright, so here's how we're going to do this. Let's get this out of the way. Alright, so over here, very top, right there, we're going to put ours right here. Now, you could use any of these. Some cases have more than these 3. We have 1, 2, 3 5 1/4, and 1 3.5 inch drive. So in our case, we're just going to, like I said, we're going to use this top one right here, right under the power buttons. I feel like it's going to fit well. I went with the optical drive I went with is a matte black, and it has a textured finish.
So it's definitely going to work well, which is why I want them next to all the other power buttons and so forth. So we're going to have to zoom out just a little bit for this part, just so you can see me doing it. Hopefully that's a little better for you. Alright, let's see if I can see anything there. Let's see if I can get you light a little bit. Alright, well, as good as I can at least. Let's see. Alright, well, I guess we're going to have to deal with the lighting here. Again, this part is going to differ from case to case. So this is another part where you can actually, you're not really following along, 100% with me. I'm just kind of giving you a tutorial as an idea of what you're doing. Or at least that's the excuse I'm using for why I can't get my lighting correct, because my camera recently broke. Alright, so we're going to pop out this top one right here. How we're going to do this is we're going to first remove the faceplate. Faceplate's about 80-85% of the cases I've worked with, whether it's small ones, ITX, mini ITX, full ATX, ultra ATX, whatever, super ATX, they've all come out the same way, most of them, and that is from the bottom over here. There's a latch, and we're going to just pull on it from the bottom up. There it is. Always the same easy way. So actually, now I can show you how we're going to take this out. Pretty cool. This one actually has a dust filter all on the inside. It's the soft one, not the meshy type. So it'll definitely help. But again, the one thing it didn't have is a fan. It did not come with a fan. Now, we are going to install one for him, although it did not come with one. However, I will probably do that off of camera, considering that is not part of the official build or the part list. That is just something I feel would help the buyer. All right? So let's do this. We're going to pop out the front. Every case is different. Let's see how this one is. Okay, so this one has these two pins right here. Can you see me doing that? There we go. You're going to pull these pins, and it should pop right out. Let's see. There we go. Good little click there. Alright, so the pins are off to the side. Alright, so we got the top one opened, and how this is going to fit is like this. Of course. This is one of the obvious parts, just making sure everything's good. Looks great. Alright, so now we're going to do the same on the actual case with the metal pieces. Again, some of them have a tab, some of them you just kind of pop off with the metal pieces. Ours is with the metal. So, let's pop that off. Some are, again, from the inside, some are from the outside. This differs with case. So this part is only subject to change depending on case. If you have my exact one, then well, good, because then you know how to do it. Alright. Got this sucker off. There we go. No need. Let's put that aside. So we now have it open on the front panel and on the case. And what you're going to do is you're going to slide it from the outside. Now, I just go ahead and keep this cover off while I do this with most cases. Some of them, you kind of have to put them back in just to level it. For us, we're not going to. We're just going to do it a slightly different way. So you can see this. Going from the outside, in, and what you're going to level it to is right here. Just like we did with the hard drive, very, very similar concept with the screws right here. Also 4 of them. Right. So this now is the time you want to put this back on, just so you know you have it leveled. Because we are done with that panel. Alright, so
Make sure everything's leveled here. Alright. There we go. Again, sorry about the horrible lighting. It gets better when I turn it. But all we need to see is the side. So yeah, make sure the front is flush and leveled. And then screw it in. Now this one, interestingly enough, has 4 screws on this side, and then it's going to be 4 screws on the other side. So let's do that. Most of the time you're using the same screws you did on the hard drive, so let's try that out. Now here you don't really need to do 8 at all. Hell, you could do 2 and work, but I figure why not? You know, he paid for it. He paid for the screws also, so let's give him what he paid for. And it is the same screws as the hard drive that we put in. Alright, so we got 1. Now we're going to go to the other side and do it just to make sure it isn't going to move anywhere. Well, making sure it's still flush. Yes, it is. There we go. I actually had it a little off center, but that's only because I am very, very picky. There you have it. Let's finish screwing that in. Now, the hard drive and actually the hard drive, or excuse me, the hard drive and the optical disk drive, they do kind of move around and rattle around. They do make some noise inside the case. So these I do try to tighten as much as I can, but as I mentioned earlier with the hard drive, do not over tighten. Alright, let's go ahead and just finish this side so I don't have to keep spinning this around. I guess that's why they put 8 screws on this, just so it doesn't move around too much. Again, 4 will be plenty, 2 on each side. But why just have the screws laying around if you're not going to use them, right? Now, I don't know if you realize, you're probably asking yourself now, I did not show you the back of the optical disk drive as I did with the hard drive, and that is for the simple reason that it is the exact same as a hard drive. It has one of those L-shaped notches on the SATA power and the SATA data cable. The SATA power comes from the power supply, if you didn't figure that one out, and the SATA data is connected to the motherboard. Just a couple more of these screws. 1. Got 1. Got 2. Oops, sorry about that, guys. We got 3. And number 4. Sorry about that noise, by the way. I had a random idea to throw a screwdriver. Just kidding. Alright. So let's finish this up. Don't want this thing making ratchety noises while it's inside. Alright, I'll go ahead and finish tightening them. The other side is seated because I did do 2 screws already on the other side. Now, this is one of those parts where once it gets inside the optical disk drive, you will keep tearing the threads on the screws. So if you do over tighten, you're pretty much going to ruin your chance of putting another screw back into that slot, or in that hole. Spent a little more time on the optical disk drive than we should have, but that's quite okay. We don't have much to go, guys. We're almost done. Ah. Oh, there's my first drop. There's always one, huh? Sure. Alright, and one more. That's it. All 8, yes, I said 8 screws are done. Again, sorry if I wasted a couple minutes of your time, but I do everything better safe than sorry, and if I'm given the screws and I have enough, I will spend the extra time doing so. Alright. So, we have those done. So what's next? What are we doing next? The next thing, and pretty much one of the last things before we do these horrid wires, is the power supply. So, let's get started on that. Let's unbox it real quick. My little ESD, electrostatic bracelet, came off. We have some manuals in here, the warranty guide, which is in 5 million languages, and the contents, again, in many, many languages. You should skim it if it's your first time, but if you've done it before, not much. Alright, so all the wires you're provided. There you are, all the different wires. The power connection, the 3-prong that goes from the power supply to your to the wall, or hopefully, better yet, the surge protector. Now, I mentioned in part 1 when I was going over the parts list that this is a modular power supply. What does that mean? Modular means exactly this. Back in the old days, the power supply had all of its cords attached to it. So if you didn't use the cord, you just basically had to hide it, and it was worse for airflow, and it crowded it, it was harder. It was even more confusing. So now you use only what you need to use. Very smart. Alright, so we have more zip ties and the 4 screws that are used to screw the power supply into the case. Now, I forgot to mention earlier, this case, it has a bottom-mounted power supply, meaning just that. Okay, so I mentioned earlier it is modular, however, it is semi-modular. Should have probably mentioned that one. Let's break open. And again, as you probably figured, semi-modular just means it has the 20 plus 4, or the 24 pin, which is this one right here, on it. And it also has the 8 pin on it. Both of these go from here, of course, to the motherboard. Alright, so, beautiful little power supply. There you go. Now, it's interesting what Corsair did here. I mentioned ours is bottom mounted. Some are top mounted. So if it is, you would think that this is going to be upside down, but it's not, because on the other side, boom, they have it the other way around. Alright, so here we have nothing but a power switch and a 3-prong. That's it. So we have a fan down here. Now this is a very, very nice, quiet fan by Corsair. I particularly love Corsair. However, they have this little sticker here that you will need, oh, sorry about that. You will need to take off this sticker because this gets very hot. It is sucking up air from the bottom.
So take this off or it will melt onto it. I've seen it happen in another build before. Alright, let's get this placed. Let me get everything out of the way first. Now, these cables over here, we're not going to use all of them, just so you're aware. Depending on what you have, for example, if you have multiple graphics cards, more than one hard drive, more than one optical drive, or whatnot, you may use more than us. That is all depend on you. So here's the modular part of this modular power supply. Right there. It has where you actually plug it in. So we have our 6+2 PCIe, or the 8-pin, and the 4+4 CPU, or the 8-pin for the processor. And then we have our peripherals and our SATA over here. Beautiful. Beautifully done. Now the one complaint I have is this right here. Why don't they just use black cables? I don't know. This just makes it look uglier. Nobody's going to have a case with red, yellow, orange, green, blue, purple, black, white, and, teal as far as the colors there. But this shows what you can do is you can use duct tape if you want to. It's going to look better if you individually sleeve them, just like this. This one's braided. What's interesting about this one is they only braided one. They braided the 24 pin over here. See if I can show you. They only braided the 24 pin right there, not the 8 pin that goes to the motherboard. Anyways, let's get this put in. Alright, I guess we could have this thing up. Let me get you guys a slightly better view here for this one. We'll be working very, very low. There we go. There we go, so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Sorry I have to keep readjusting the camera, guys. That's my bad. It's just I don't have a proper camera. And this customer asked for his build to be videotaped, so that's what we're doing. Alright, so again, bottom mounted, so the fan is down. So we're putting it down. As beautiful as it is, we are putting it down. And we're just sliding it in right here. Now, we're going to go ahead and move my electrostatic to the other side now. Oh, the strap thing. And plus it helps for many more reasons throughout the rest of the build. Now the bottom here, hopefully your case has some kind of rubber taps or something. Let me see if I can get a little better. Right here, a little rubber here and here. That's definitely a good idea because you don't want it sitting metal to metal. This is also metal. Alright, so let's get this sucker in there. This part is very easy, by the way. Nothing to fear whatsoever. Alright. So let's spin the sucker around. There we go. Sorry about the lighting once again, guys. Let's see if I can fix that just a bit. That helped a bit. Alright, let's get the 4 screws that it came with right here. Neat little baggie. Alright, and you're going to do it here, here, and here on every power supply I've ever used. And probably all for the past 40 years. Just make sure it's flush, and then just tighten those 4 screws. That's all there is to that, Jack. Now we're going to hold the power supply on the other side just so we keep it flush. Actually, this first screw, kind of holds it all together anyways. The first screw, that is. Right, 1, going diagonal, 2. Here it's not as important going diagonal, but then again it is because it keeps it straight. I just keep the whole pattern the whole way through the build.
All right, number 2. Number 3. And one more to go. That's a little better lighting for you. I don't know if it is or not. There we go. Alright, one more. Alright, go through, tighten them all up. Here you can't really over tighten, but I'm sure you could tear the threads on the screw, so again, don't try, you don't need to. There we go, all of ours are screwed in. Alright, so the power supply is done. At least for installing it, that is. Now on to the dreadful part, which is the wiring. Now, I am going to separate a whole separate part for the wiring, so we're going to have one last video. That will be part 5, and that will be dedicated to wiring. It may or may not be as long as this one and the one before it, but I did want to, go slower and take some time in explaining what each one is. Although I have been doing that for the rest of the video, I definitely want to focus on that now. So anyways, guys, come back for part 5. Thanks for watching. So, on to part 5, which is also the final part of this 5-part video series on building a computer. Alright, so in this step, as mentioned in part 4, we are just going to do the wiring, all the cable management, get all the cables done, and the final touch-ups. Make sure we run through everything, make sure everything's connected, everything is seated properly, and ready to post, to do our power on self-test, enter the BIOS, and get going with the OS or operating system installation, which also will be a separate part. So technically there is a 6th part, but as far as the build itself, this is it. Alright, so on to it. Alright, so just a quick recap. What we've done so far is, of course, being in this step, we've installed the RAM onto the motherboard. We got 8 gigabytes of G.Skill. We installed the processor onto the motherboard, and then as you see here, we installed the AMD stock cooler heatsink fan onto the motherboard, or rather onto the processor. There is our Gigabyte WindForce Edition NVIDIA GTX 760 graphics card, our CX600M modular power supply, which is going to actually help us out a lot, because we don't have to use the cables that are not required for this particular build, which is what's great about modular, or in our case, semi-modular. Alright, we got the hard drive in there, we got the optical drive in there, and we're ready for the wiring as mentioned. Alright, so let's roll. Alright, so again, I know I've mentioned this multiple times, but since this is the part to mention it once again. In this particular build, there aren't many wires, but once you actually start looking at them, you know, some people start getting a little anxious and nervous about all these little ones and where they go in this one, and you have the fan one here. But let me explain what each one is, and you will see how easy it is, and they all have their own spot. And for the most part, majority of them, about 90% plus, are foolproof. Alright, so here, of course, attached to the fan, you have the 3-pin fan connector. That is going to go into the motherboard on one of the chassis fan labeled connectors. This big one, which is your new USB 3.0. Here it is right here. Alright, so this one, again, is for the front panel USB. this right here. Right there, we got the USB 3.0. Alright, our next cable is this one right here, which is, as it is labeled, the USB connection. That is for the USB 2.0 right there on the front. Alright. Then we have our HD audio. Now, a lot of cases still come with a legacy AC97 audio. This case just skipped it altogether, which is great because I don't think I've used that in the past 3 years. So HD audio, that is of course for these audio jacks right up front, the microphone and the headphone jack. Okay, moving on, we have the front panel connectors on the motherboard. Usually they are labeled just simply as panel. So let's quickly go over them. Right here, this one right here, we have the power switch. Now, quick note, a lot of these have a negative and a positive and a negative input, but not all of them. For example, the power switch does not. Okay, so that can be connected either way. So you don't have to worry about that part at least. Now on the next one you do. It's right over here. You got the power LED, okay, the negative, and the power LED right there, sorry about that, the positive. Next we have the only other one that it doesn't matter if you do positive or negative, which is right there. You got the reset switch, and last but not least, you have the hard disk drive LED, which has the positive and negative labeled, which it is also labeled on your motherboard. And if you need any help, they in the motherboard manual, which I always say keep nearby, will have this explained, and there will be a diagram. Alright, so as far as our case goes, our Thermaltake Versa 2, beautiful little mid-tower ATX case, that's it for our case. Alright, the only one we've done so far is the fan one right there. Sorry about that. One right there connected. Now we will do a little cable management once again, but that's in the finishing touches part. Alright, so the only other cables that are not part of the case, they are part of the power supply. And that is right here. So we've opened that before, so let's see what we got here. Alright, so one of these is braided, rather poorly, but braided nonetheless. By poorly, I mean you can still see all the colored wires through the braid, but with how our cable management is going to be, you're not really going to see that. It's all going to go from the back, and you'll see what I mean by that. Alright, so this is your most important cable, because if you don't connect it, which I don't know how you could possibly miss this beast of a cable, this is your 20+4 or 24 pin cable. That is why, see that? It has these little pins. Not sure if you can see that. There you go. Alright. Our particular motherboard is going to use the whole 24. So click and it's going to stay there. That is to give power to the motherboard. Simple as that. Now, there is a secondary power source that needs to go into the motherboard also. Do not forget this, or it will not even turn on. So even if you did forget it, once again, point of being foolproof. Here it is. This is an 8-pin. However, it is not to be confused with the PCIe 8-pin that connects into the, for example, the graphics card. And we'll go over that here in a second. Alright, so as far as that semi-automatic modular power supply, those are the only two that come out of it stock. Alright, so in this trusty little bag right here that we went over earlier, that came with the power supply, we will not be using all of them. But let's just go over and see which ones we have. Alright, first off, you have a Molex. Pretty much a legacy, not really used much anymore, but for example, there are some newer items, like for example, a fan controller, or a floppy drive. Well, essentially these were used for floppy drives. Now they do have other uses, which is why they are included with this Corsair power supply, but we will not be using this. So that's it for that one. We're not using it. Alright, let's throw it aside.
Another one is, there's two of these. These are the SATA power cables. What these look like, and I showed you earlier, these are the ones with the little notch. Let's see if I can get you a better view here, guys. I don't know if you can see that. See how it's got that little L shape? Well, there's this cable. Now this one has multiple ones on there, as you can see. You got 1, 2, and 3. And of course what connects to the power supply looks completely different. So we will be using one of these. Only one of these, hopefully, unless it's not long enough. This cable is used for connecting hard drives, optical drives, solid state drives, and such. Now we are only connecting an optical drive and one hard drive. That's it. So we are using this one. Let's put it over here. All right, only two more that came with ours. Here, as I touched up on earlier, and this one's neatly labeled PCIe, it is also what's called a 6+2 pin. You can see right here. That's why you got 6 plus the 2 right there. This is again for the power supply. Now this one's interesting. Let me open this one up. Again, this is not to be confused with the 8-pin, which does not fit on your motherboard, but please try not to jam it in there. Yours might not be labeled, but it also won't have this little piece if it's made for the motherboard connection. Because again, this cable is from the power supply to the graphics card. All right, so you have the 6+2, which is the 8-pin. Now, if you look at this cable, there's 2. Okay, and we will be using this. See that little squid? This is all just one piece right here. Now, real quickly, the other side. This side just simply plugs into the power supply. Now here, see how it's split like this? 2 of the same ones. That is because we might need an extra one for our graphics card. Let me show you why we will be needing that one. You see right there? It has an 8-pin right over here and another 6-pin. So our power supply actually needs that extra little bit of power. Each of those cables provide a different wattage. The 8-pin is, I believe, 150 watts, and the 6-pin is, if I'm not mistaken, 70 watts. Alright, so we will be using that one, needless to say, or else I wouldn't have been going over it this long. So let's put that one aside. Alright, there's only one more cable here. This one right here. Yes, it is another SATA, and no, we will not be using it. This is the one with that L-shaped notch. So we're going to throw that aside, and that's it, guys. That is all the cables in this entire build. This build in particular, that is. Of course, you might have an extra one, but again, it's going to be labeled. It's going to come either from the power supply to peripheral or the motherboard, or like, for example, from the front, you're going to have multiple USB 2.0s, or you're going to have legacy audio, but they will be labeled, so nothing to fret about. Alright, so let's get started. Enough chit-chat. Let's put aside the ones we're not using. Right back into the bag. And again, the only two we're not using is one of the Molex 4-pin legacy cables, although they are still somewhat used for fan controllers and such. And the secondary SATA we will not be using. Alright, so again, let's get building. Now, hopefully my lighting is sufficient for this one, because this step is going to be very hard to see and explain unless you're actually looking at it. So here we go. We're not going to worry about the fan right now, though that is an easy one you could do first, but since it is that easy, I just want to focus on the ones where you're actually going to need my help, to say the least. Alright, so first one we're going to do, and keep in mind, guys, the reason I installed all my items and screwed everything in and had everything seated before I did this is for the reason I'm about to mention. I do my majority of my cable management as I am, connecting everything. So For example, the biggest, ugliest one I always like to get out of the way is, and by the way, I like to work on my front panel first just to get them out of the way. Then I connect my fans and then my power supply. That's just the way I do it. Alright, so this one right here, I believe it is a 19 pin if I'm not mistaken, just going from memory, goes into what is labeled USB 3 dash or USB underscore 34 on our motherboard. It will change on yours, but it'll be very similar. It'll be labeled USB 3 underscore something. Whatever that something is does not matter. Just plug it in there. This one only fits in one spot in the entire motherboard. Each motherboard, at least to date, only has one of these. Alright, so let's wrap this around the other side. Let's see. So just to show you, it goes, let me get you a better view. Sorry about that. Just trying to get you a better view of what we're doing. Alright, so right here, right there, let me try to zoom in, see if it helps any. Okay. Alright, so right there, sorry, my camera's not wanting to zoom in properly. Maybe just a little bit better. There we go. So let's see if we can get some focus on there. Either way, I'm sorry about the camera, but it only fits in one way. So, simple as that. Now, like I said, be conscious of your cable management. You don't want it to be messy, because if you have, all these cords just like this, the airflow is going to be disturbed. So, keep that in mind. So move the other ones off to the side. Do not get confused. Just do one at a time. And if you're going to start on the front panel, just finish the front panel. If you're going to do the fans, do all the fans before going to the front panel, and so forth. Either do the power supply first or last. I leave it for last because those are the big cables, and I just that's just something I've always done. Alright, so since it plugs in here, I want to hide the rest of it. So I'm going to do just that. Going to take this all the way to the back. And I'm going to come in here and connect it. And get you a little closer. I see that you're not really. There we go. So that's the one we're working on right there. There we go. Hopefully that helps just a little bit, guys. Back to it. Again, it only goes in one way. There's a little latch, or actually a little notch, excuse me, where it plugs into, and it should give you a little nice audible click once it's in there. Ours didn't, so let me try this again. See if you can hear it. Okay, so no click, but I know it's in because you can tell it's when it's flush. Won't go any further. Let me just double check something. Alright, so it's in. Alright, spent a little more time on that than I should have, but again, just trying to be thorough. So we're going to leave this hanging back here just for now. We will do our cable management afterwards. Next, we have the USB. Now again, if you guys don't know where this goes, consult your manual, the motherboard manual. and it will give you a picture diagram very, very, very easy. Where this goes is lower down here. Hopefully I can get you a view on that. There we go. See these pieces right there? Try to focus in on that. You got number 1, 2, and 3. Motherboards usually have 2 or 3 here. It does not matter which one you use, although again, consult your manual just to make sure one of them is not shared with another one. Alright, so we're using these 3. Well, we're using one of those 3. Alright, so again, let's get this cable around. Let's get it hidden. We're going to go to the same spot because we are going to zip tie everything together, make it look neat. But for now, we're going to go down through there. And this is, of course, going to depend on your case, but... And let's get to the closest one. Again, this is very foolproof. See that? How it's missing that one little pin right there? Let's see if I can get that zoomed in. See how it's missing that one on the top? Well, just look at the USB and you will see that there's only 9 pins, although it looks like there's 10 slots, but there's only 9 pins, so make sure you line the one that's missing up, and that's all you got to do. It will just click into place. That's it. Rather not click, but you will feel it sit in. Alright, that's it for that one. The next one is the one that is the lookalike of the USB. Also a 9 pin, as you can see right here. Structured as a 10 pin, but it is missing that one little notch right there. Okay, so as you notice though, it's different from the USB. That is again so you don't plug it into the wrong spot. 90% of the motherboards I've worked with has had this in the same spot, which is the bottom one. Right there is where ours is. Okay, and again, just look for the one that's missing one of these in the same spot, and that's it. Alright, so let's get that done. Once again, we're going to route it through the back. Sorry about the focus there. Alright, we're going to come in and we're going to just plug it in to the one that is labeled audio or AAFP or SPDIF. Although the SPDIF, which stands for I believe Sony Philips Display Interface, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Sony Philips Display Interface, that one is right on top, so don't mix it up. It looks like all the pins are together, they are not. Alright, so again, line up the little missing one with the one that's not missing. Now here, just for you guys, I'm going to give you a little light. There we go. Let's see if we can give you a little focus here. Let's get this out of the way for a moment. Right there. That's where we're plugging in the audio. There we go. Alright. There we go. Get it straightened up and connected. Careful not to bend the pins, guys. Alright, that one is safely secured and it's not going anywhere. So, and then there's only one front panel connector left, which is this one, the one that's usually the most confusing, but it's not really. So let's get to it. Let's move everything out of the way. Alright, I'll try to keep the light on there if I can, but I only have 2 hands, and I got a camera, flashlight, and the cord. So, this one is labeled, as I mentioned earlier, panel. That's this one again, just this is what we're working with. Ours has it all together, but of course you can pull and, kind of splice it. Alright, so here is the part that you really have to look, look and see, read every little one that's in there. And the manual, this is 99.99% of the time where anybody, whether you're a pro or a novice, consults the manual, unless you've worked with the same motherboard before. Because again, even the same brands, or the same branded motherboard can have different ones. I've used multiple Asus ones that had it in complete different orientations. Alright, so although you won't be able to see me really plugging it in, I am just following the guide from the motherboard manual, but also, let me show you here. If you can see right here, I'm not sure you can, let's see if I can get you some light. See that right there at the bottom under that white latch right there? There is little some words there, you see. They're actually telling you the positive and the negative and what it is, whether it's a power switch or it's power LED and whatnot. So again, just follow that guideline. So you will not be able to see me doing this because I will be covering it. These cords are, these wires, excuse me, are very small, but you get the picture. Just trying to get some light for myself in here. I doubt I'll be able to, but better than nothing. Nah, whatever. No light, no fight. Alright, so let's do this. I will be in your way here for a moment, because again, it is very hard for me to see where I'm plugging everything in. Alright, so I'm going to work on, first off, I'm going to again take this from the back, just for cable management's sake. Alright, so let me get the power switch out of the way. Actually, let me do the hard drive LED because it's all the way to the left. Alright, so hard drive LED, again, this is one of the positive negative ones where it matters. And for me, it is right there, and it's labeled hard drive LED, positive, negative. So that is exactly how we're going to connect it. Negative to negative, positive to positive, of course. So damn small. Alright, got that one. Next, right above it for us, you have the power LED. This is those single ones right here. The ones that are just one little pin. See if I can get you a better view. There you go, just the one pin ones. This has just a positive one and a negative one. So, again, following the guide, we're going to do the positive one first. And then the negative. So hard to see. Alright, there we go. We got those connected. Finally, we have our, well, not finally, there's actually two more. So we're going to do the power switch next, because it's the next one in line. This one does not matter if it's positive or negative. And then the reset switch, which is right next to it. And actually, there is one more that I completely forgot about, which I went over in the first video, which is the trusty little audible beeping speaker. This is also labeled, this is also part of that little connection that we've been working on back there. Alright, so the speaker also does not have a positive and negative, by the way. And it goes right on top for us. And just so you know, it is a 4-pin. I had to double check. I don't always use the speaker. That's it. So, was that really that hard? As far as the front panel goes, we're done. There you go. Alright, so we're done there. Just trying to straighten these up a little bit. There we go. Alright, now we're going to do the fan. Fan
fan is again a 3-pin. Your fan can be a 4-pin if it's a PWM fan. And if it is a PWM fan, you'll know. If it's not, well, you just will never hear that term then. Why'd I even mention it, huh? Just trying to teach you. Alright, so let's get this undone. Hate these zip ties. It's probably the 20th one I've done for this build. Now, real quick, this case does not have the best cable management on the back panel. Like, for example, back here. Let's see, show you. Like this right here, this whole area back here, behind the graphics card, all right here, and all on top. That's about the only spot I can really take anything to. So, a lot of cases, you know, they have it on top, like above here. There's going to be a gap back there for this the 8-pin one, and then there's going to be a gap right here just for the bottom ones. But unfortunately, this one did not. Then again, this case is still worth every single penny that was paid for it. And wow, is this a long cable for a fan, considering it's going right there. Literally, here's the fan. Let me show you this. How stupid some manufacturers can be. Alright, there's the fan, right here. See that? Fan, I'm touching it right now. There you go, spinning it. And that's where it's plugging in, right there. So, I have no idea why they gave me this 900-foot cable. Alright, so again, this is labeled chassis fan 1. Now, this is a prime example. On the motherboard, it is a 4-pin. Alright, let me see if I can show you that. Alright, right there. It's a 4-pin. But you see that little latch right here? Right there on this side. Well, that one's over only 3 pins, and that is for our example. This being only 3-pin, we are going to only use 3 of the 4 pins, but we're going to follow the guideline that this little notch right there gave us. So we're just leaving the 4th hole open. Again, this is a foolproof installation. But unfortunately, I do need to set the camera down so I can stabilize my hand. Alright, hopefully this helps just a bit. Alright, that's where we're installing it right here. Focused into it. And that's it. It's in. Now, as far as cable management for this one, unfortunately, there's just not much I can do. But what I can do is wrap this big-ass cord. Holy shit. We can wrap this on top. And then we're going to double wrap it right there. And we're probably going to zip tie it or use some duct tape, which, personally, I always use zip tie just because they're always given. So there you go. So that entire cable, you can see right there, just turned into that. That's all we're going to be seeing. That's why cable management is, rather important to me. Just for aesthetics. Gotta look good, right? Alright, so now we're going to focus on the final part of this cable management, which is, the wiring of the case, which is the power supply to the motherboard and to the hard drive, optical drive, and so forth. So just from the power supply to whatever. That's it. And then there's 1 or 2 more, but we'll go over that. Now, I did leave out one other cable, and I did that on purpose. Well, you'll see why later. No point in explaining now. Alright, so let's grab this big one. This 20+4, or just easily said, the 24. I explained why it is that kind. And it's going right, see if I can get you a better view. It's going right there next to the RAM. Let's see if I can get you a slightly better view. Right there. That's where that one's going. We're using the whole 24-pin set. Right. So let's route this around. Take it back. This is one cord. I gotta hide as much as I can because, I mean, look at how big that thing is. It's bigger than my thumb, and my hand is not big for any stretch in reality, but it is. Alright, so we got it around. Again, see these little pins? Let me show you. See these? This pin right here? It's gonna lock in. That thing moves, and it's gonna lock in to that right there on the right side. Okay, so again, I'll be covering it while I connect it, but again, there's nothing you can mess up here. It's foolproof. This big ass cable is not going to fit anywhere else in your entire build. Simple as that. Now that we've routed it around, we are going to come back in. And guys, just so you see, the only reason I'm routing it around is because the graphics card right here is so big. It's almost, actually, I was going to say it's almost touching my my hard drive, but although it's not touching, it is overlapping it. It's overlapping it by about 1/4 of an inch. And again, we could have moved the hard drive lower, but no need. I'm putting a fan right under the power supply, so I want as much airflow going straight to the graphics card. Alright, so let's wrap this around. Remember, just don't forget one thing, this right here. That's all we're working on right now, is having that match up to the right side of that. That's it. So, to say the least, you are going to come in awkward because you're going to have to basically do a backwards spin with the biggest cable in your entire build. But that's okay because it is the most important one. Let's fix this. Come on, you. There we go. And this one you will hear a click. I think. I hope. It's like as if everything I say is going to be opposite just because this cord knows I hate it and it hates me. It's too ugly. Look at this thing. Way too ugly. But that is no problem. It can be fixed. Make sure it's seated since I didn't hear it click. Alright, it's in. So next, we're going to do the 8-pin. This is the one, oh, it's actually labeled CPU on the side. Usually Corsair labels it on one of the sides, or on the front or the back, but it's labeled on the side. And again, as you see here, it has a notch, extruding notch there, and a little one there. As you can see me opening it. So again, foolproof as far as you putting it in. And that is going to the very top. Let me show you. Oh, sorry about that. That is going right here, because this you probably will not have a good view of while I do it. It's going right there in that plastic piece right there. There it goes. Alright, and that's at the very top of the motherboard, and it will be on about 99% of the motherboards. I think I've only worked with 1 or 2 that was not the case. if I can get you a better view there. No, don't think I'll be able to get you any better view than that. Alright, well, at least you'll see me, you'll see the area I'm working at, although I already explained. Alright, so let's get that done real quick. Again, routing it to the back. Always route to the back. I really wish it had an extra hole up there, but it doesn't. Which is fine with me, but whatever. Alright, let's get it connected. That's it. Hopefully you heard that click. Of course, I did not say anything, therefore it clicked. If I said it's going to click, it wouldn't have clicked. So, that's all there is to that one. Alright, now we're going to hide it on top. I'll show you guys. I know you can't really see, but I will show you what I did. Alright. So, on top, right here, I just took the cable. No focus. Alright, see that right cable right on along the top right there? It's connected right there, and I just took it right on top above the RAM, above everything, just so you can see it as little as possible. So that's as much cable management as this particular chassis, or case, excuse me, will allow me to do. Simple as that. Alright. So, now we have 3 cables to connect, but only 2 more from the power supply to the motherboard or the peripherals. Alright, so the first one we're going to do, actually, we're going to do the SATA. Now, hopefully, we only need one of these cables, because as I mentioned earlier, it does have multiple. Well, you got 1, 2, and 3 different ones. So hopefully that'll connect our hard drive and our optical drive with just this one cable, so we do not have to whip out the other one. And the only way that's going to be deciphered is the length of it. In my case, one was not longer than the other. But let's see what we got. I see you have these 3. It does not matter which one you connect. But what I always do is if I have one device, I always connect it to either the the first one in line, or the last. I skip the middle. And if I have 2, same thing. Usually I'll do this and this, only for better cable management, but you can do any variation. So first, let's connect it to the power supply. Let's see if I can get you guys a better view on that one. Horrible light there, but best I can. Right, so this is where we're connecting it, right up there. See that? See those? Alright, so the one that's down here, that's labeled 4+4 CPU, which is right there. We're going to connect it there. Or excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm thinking ahead. We're going to connect it to the one that says SATA, right down there. And again, it'll only fit in its proper seating. Although with modular, there are times where one cable will fit into 2 spots, but it'll be labeled no matter what. So that's all there is to that. Right, so let's hope this cable's long enough. Alright, so let's go ahead and do it to the bottom. Sorry about that little pause, guys. Got sidetracked there for a moment.
Alright, so we're going to connect it right there. Bam. Route it to the back. And this one, we are again connecting our hard drive and our optical drive from the power supply, which I just connected, to the drive, of course. We're connecting this right here and that right there. Alright, I'm sorry, there is no way I'm able to show you as I'm doing it, but this right here is the closest I can get. Right there. As far as lighting allows, that's it. That's better than nothing, I guess. Right, there we go. So that's where we're going. Some light. So we connected that to the power supply. Now we are taking it to the back as always. From the looks of it, I'm pretty sure we'll be okay with this one cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the optical drive on top here first, and that's the one you can't see, but it'll be the same exact process repeated for the optical or for the hard drive. So you'll see me doing that part. This is again the cable with the little L-shaped notch on it, so you can't mess up. It will not fit any other way. Simple as that is. Alright, we're in, and then the part you can actually see right here. Now ours, this cable will work, however, we are skipping the middle as I usually do. I didn't even try to do it this time, but as length of the cable persisted, we had to do. Remember, there's a SATA power and a SATA data. If you're coming from the power supply, the obvious choice is the SATA power, although it will not fit in the SATA data because it is the SATA, the power one, the one we're working with, is double the size. Alright, so that's it. We got power to both those devices. Now let's get some data to those devices. Now earlier on, in about the second part of the video, I showed you these SATA power cables. So let's get this opened up. Sorry, Triple Blade. I cheated on you that time. Alright, so there's two in here. Most motherboards come with at least two. There's a regular one, right there. Again, the smaller with an L shape. Right. And it does click in. See that metal? It'll click in. And then there's another one, which I actually touched up on earlier. I said it was pretty cool that they gave us one of these. I wish they gave us two of these, but nonetheless. So you have a straight one, and then you have a 90-degree one. Well, that's just for easier fit, and that's all. That's all it's in there for. How we're going to use that is our motherboard. So you see these right here? Now, I have other ones up here that you can't see. Let me actually see if I can show you. Now, it does matter where you connect these only if you read through the manual and you realize that some of these are SATA 6. Well, I guess we are going to have a part 6 because my camera reached its maximum recording capacity for that one video. So, pardon me as far as that goes, but going on. So, the SATA that we're working on now, which is one of the final things we actually have to do as far as wiring. Hopefully it wasn't that hard. Those right there labeled SATA. There are two different types. Now, this is where it gets confusing. Only in the name. They are both SATA or SATA 6, but some run on SATA 6 3 gigabits per second, and some run on SATA
gigabits per second. So see where I'm focusing right there? All of ours, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of ours are 6, and I knew that by skimming through the manual. So it doesn't matter where we plug in. Basically, it's just going to be wherever is easiest for you, whatever works as far as length goes, and cable management in mind. So we are going to use these right here, just so we can hide them more. That's it. It's the only reason. Now, whether you use the straight one right here, or you're going to use the 90-degree one that I showed earlier, right here, is again just for that only reason. Now, you can either plug this in here to the optical drive or the hard drive, the 90-degree that is, or to the motherboard. I am going to go ahead and do well, see, here's the thing. I guess we'll go ahead and we'll do this way. Since this is going to come out anyways, because of the power one, we're going to go ahead and make the looks better on the motherboard. So we'll use our 90-degree on the motherboard. So again, the data cable, if it's not a power cable, it is the SATA data cable. It's going to come from the motherboard to the optical drive and the hard drive, both, one in each. So let's connect that right there. Sorry guys, let me get this out of the way for you. There we go. And we're going to connect, oh, and they fell back in. All right, so there we go. So you can see. All right. All right. Got that one. And it is going to go to the optical drive first, only because it's a lot higher. Whoops. Right there. Right here on top. Alright, some light right there. And it's going to go all the way on top to the optical disk drive. So again, take it to the back. And right around. Spin it around a little bit. There we go. And right around to the optical drive on top. Keep the L shape aligned, or else you'll just have absolutely no luck doing this. There we go. And you will hear it click. That's it. It's in there. So we got SATA, data, and power onto our optical drive. Now we're going to use the only other cable. And this is the final cable, hooray, that we are going to use to connect everything. And then we, of course, always are going to go through once again and double check everything is seated properly, connected, flush, and so on. So, last one. Back down here. Top of the next one right there. Alright. And we're connecting. This is again just the flat 180-degree one. It's not 90 degrees or anything. And we're connecting it, lining up the L. And we're going now to the hard drive. Since the hard drive is right next to where we're going, we are just going to wrap it to the back and back out. So that's it. Alright, so that is it for cable management and cable connecting, guys. That's it. Although cable management, you could do more as far as, depending on the case, but as far as we go, we're just going to go through zip tie all that mess back there, zip tie all these together here, and that's all we can do. That's it. But I will do a little bit of cable management on this video, and then that's it. Alright, Now, I just realized that while I was doing the video, I forgot about probably the most important cable. At least it is for a gaming computer. And the reason I forgot about it is because I threw it behind the case so it wouldn't be in the camera, and I just kind of skimmed over it. Alright, so yes, the PCIe cable, which is going in your PCIe card, which is our graphics card right here. Both of those, that one and that one. So sorry about that, guys, but one more we're going to have to plug into the power supply. And again, it is labeled PCIe. Get some light down there. Alright, put that one in. Take it through the back, as I've done with all the rest, just for cable management's sake. And back out this way. And the only reason we went around the graphics card, only to come back to the graphics card, is so that I can hide one of the ends of the cables. No other reason. Let me fix this mess over here real quick. There we go. Alright, it's a weird little squid cable. Alright, so again, this is the 6+2 or the 8. You can connect them. Now, here's what we're going to do here. One of ours uses 6, the other uses 8. So although we are going to use both sides of this, okay, but we're not using one of these. Because see right here, we have a 6 right there and an 8 right there. So let's connect the 8, or excuse me, the 6 first, because it's right there. Alright, the 6 is in, and now we're going to do the 8. I'm going to put this together. Alright, and now the 8. Alright, we got the graphics card powered and good to go now. So, let's take the excess, this right here, let's just take it all the way to the back. We do not need it. Some graphics cards that require more power, that consume more power rather, will use it, the others will not. In our case, we have a GTX 760 and it chose not to eat that much power, which is pretty cool. Alright, now we're done with cable management and wiring and all the rest. Alright, so, again, we're going to go just delve into lightly into the cable management, and that's it. I will do a majority of cable management off camera because there is nothing to learn about you being unique in how you zip tie and tape your cables, okay? So, for the most part, all we're going to do on video, and what majority of cable management is anyways, is this back part right here, okay? We're just going to get these cables all together, okay? Now, as you're doing this, watch the front. Make sure you're not unplugging anything. Make sure everything is, in there, connected. This is where I do my touch-ups. Alright, so it looks like everything is in for us. Alright, so we'll get some zip ties out. Glad we got a lot of these, because we will use them. At least I do. And let's do this. Let's grab this. Let's tie it right here. Alright, so for now, we're just going to grab these right here. And we're going to zip tie them. Zip tie them. See if I can get you. So up on top, or these right here, we're just going to zip tie together. And again, this is a personal preference here, but I do cut off the edge, or excuse me, the excess of the zip tie. Now, no need to overdo it, because if you're going to upgrade your computer, you are going to only hate yourself that much more that you did it so hard. So, let's cut off the excess. And this is the only time I had in mind as far as when I said you need some scissors. That's it, just this. Be careful not to cut your cables. You didn't spend all that time just to ruin it, did you? Alright, quick pause. For me, that is. Gotta get my trusty little Red Bull on. Grow some wings while I do this. Alright, there we go. Alright, so let's zip tie another batch of cables. Now we're going to zip tie this big batch of cables right here together. Sorry if you're having trouble seeing it. Get your slightly better view. There we go. Just get all those together and zip tie away. Grr. All right. Alright, and let's finish zip tying. All I was doing there is tightening it, and that's it. Alright, let's cut the excess off. Alright, grab another batch of cables to zip tie. Here we're gonna grab these. This one right here. I try to just tighten them a little bit, but not too much. Alright, we're gonna grab these right here and zip tie them right there, just like that, just to get them out of the way. Now keep in mind, there's not much room between this front panel and where the cover goes, the panel cover. So you can't have this coming out too much. So try to flatten it out as much as you can, guys. See these right here? We're actually going to use those for cable management for our zip ties. And that will help us flatten it out. Grab a zip tie. And run it right through. There we go. To the bottom. And tie away. Just trying to get it as flat as I can so we don't have any problems. All right. And I think just one more round of zip ties will do. Yeah, well, actually, from the back at least. Let's do this real quick first. What I see here, see this mess right here? Let's just get that cleaned up real quick. Yeah, there's no magic or art form to zip tying. You do it to what the case or the chassis allows you to do, or to how you like it, how you prefer it. That's it. We're just gonna do it just like that right there. This is a big one. Hopefully our zip tie is big enough. Okay, it is. Accidentally let go there. Alright, so luckily our Our zip tie broke, but it broke in a decent manner. So, no problem there. Alright, that's it, guys. That's all I'm going to make you sweat through. We're just going to continue this probably for the next 5 minutes. Like, for example, right here. We're just going to do it here. And that's it. When you're done with cable management, just go through, make sure everything is plugged in, flush, good to go, no problems, and that'll be it. Alright, so the next part, although the build is done, the next part will be Windows. It'll be installing the operating system and just starting to set everything up. Alright, so stay tuned for the next part. Thanks for watching. Alright, so although I mentioned the previous part was the last one, all I meant by that was our build itself is complete. So there is something left to do, which is doing on post the power on self-test, running the BIOS setup, and installing the operating system, which we will do in this step. So we finished our cable management, as you can see. That's as much as we could do. Got everything going. Everything's looking fantastic. Everything's plugged in, touched up. Wires are hidden as much as possible. There you go. Hopefully you can see. Alright, so let's get everything plugged in. First thing you want to do is plug in the monitor. We're going to be using a DVI cable. Looks like that. It's the DVI-I, meaning, or excuse me, DVI-D, meaning digital only. See that bar right there? I don't know if you can see it. There we go, a little better focus. Alright, and we're going to plug it into the bottom one. Now this graphics card has an HDMI port, a display port, and 2 DVIs. No VGAs. No VGAs anywhere here. Not on the motherboard, not on the graphics card, which is great. That makes me happy. Alright, so we got that plugged in. The other side, we got it plugged in here. Okay, we got the power for the monitor. There we go, into our surge protector. Alright, now we want to plug in the mouse or keyboard. This doesn't matter which one goes first. We'll just go ahead and do our keyboard. Ours is USB. Now, mine has 2 USBs I have to plug in. Do not worry, yours is only going to have one. The other one is just a USB pass-through. What that means is my keyboard has a USB socket in there. So, for me to be able to use the keyboard's USB, I have to plug in a pass-through. So, I don't know which one's a keyboard, which one's a pass-through, so I'm just going to do both. Now, you cannot use USB 3.0 to do this part. You have to use USB 2.0 because to use these blue USB 3.0 ports on the back and on the front of the case, you actually have to install the drivers, which is what we'll do next. Alright, so let's get this plugged in. Alright, and the mouse. That's it. That's all you need to. Hell, that's all you should plug in as far as peripherals go. Monitor, mouse, and keyboard. That's it. Don't plug in your Wi-Fi yet. Don't plug anything else in. No headset, nothing. Speakers, none of that. All right? And last but not least, we need to connect our power right there. So let's do that real quick. Let's set the camera down. Here we are. Power cable. Let's get that undone. So we'll plug that in here. It's a 3-prong. Yours probably will be 2. 2 as in a 3-prong also. Well, there. Alright, and let's get this plugged into power. You don't want to hit the power button yet. Just leave the power button. I don't know if you can see it right there. The power button, just leave that for now. That's the very last thing we're going to do. Alright, and please, even for the first time you ever plug it into a surge protector. You do not want your entire work to go to waste. Everything you just did there just for nothing. Alright, so we got that going. Got that plugged in. Now, let's get started with the boot up. Alright, so now the first thing you want to do is you want to turn on the monitor. Now, you see how I have this open? I have that for a reason. Now, a lot of PC builders and techs have a superstition about if you put on the second panel, this one right here, I already put the other side on, there's nothing there but wires. But anyways, the superstition is if you put it on, something will go wrong. I really leave it on for that and, reasons as I want to look at it. I want to feel the airflow, make sure everything is working. I just want to see my creation right up front in my face without a cover. This particular one doesn't have a window, so that's another reason. Alright, so monitor first. Got a 24-inch ViewSonic. Now here I am using a Razer Death Adder mouse. Okay. Razer Black Widow keyboard, and a Razer Goliathus mousepad. So yes, I am a Razer guy. Got the Razer headphones over here, and I got the Razer controller over here. That's beside the point, though. You'll be cool like me once you actually build your first computer, too. Alright, so our monitor's on. It's on standby. It's waiting for our next move. And our next move is to turn on the power back here. Let's give this sucker power. You guys ready to go? Alright, let's give it some power. Alright, so we should see the motherboard light on. That's the first step, so that's a good sign. You see that? We got some light there. Alright. No beeps yet, nothing like that. We're not waiting for that yet. Alright, now we go to the front and we press the power button. Okay? So our power button's right here. And we are going to press it. You guys ready to go? Ready to roll? You sure? Alright, let's do this. Uh-oh, we got a light. Let's wait for a beep now. Fan spinning. Oh, we got our beep. That beep is a godsend. There we go. Press delete to enter BIOS. It says new CPU installed. Please enter setup to configure your system. Yeah, we need to do that. So here we go. All right, so guys, when you see this, you should already smile. At least let's say half a smile. Just kind of have a grin on your face, because if it got to BIOS, at least the post or the power on self test went through. Okay, meaning your parts are at least in working order. Whether they are all going to be compatible and work together is a whole different story, and that's once we get into Windows, that's what that's for. All right, so we're gonna do the setup. Now here we're in easy mode. Okay, so just for the sake of the video and for teaching, we are going to keep everything in easy mode. Let me get this camera going. Alright, so hopefully you guys have a good view. Sorry about the blur, but you'll be able. I'll be explaining where I'm going and what I'm doing. So, first thing we want to do is the boot priority. So we are installing Windows 7 through a disk. Remember seeing this in part 1? Yeah, here we go. So we're going to be doing it through a disk. So down here, if you see where I'm highlighting, we need to set the disk first. And it says HLDT, ST, DVD, RAM, blah, 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 and then the model number right down there to the bottom right, or excuse me, left of our system. The next one is our hard drive. It's showing that we have a 1 terabyte, that's correct. So, our boot priority, you can switch it, okay, by just dragging and dropping. But ours started up correctly. We want our first one
in line to be the disk, at least for now. We will be changing that after you set up Windows. So then you have system performance, 3 different modes. You have power saving, normal, or ASUS optimal. Well, hell, you could go ahead and do ASUS optimal. However, for the first boot, please don't do any overclocking, anything, and no tweaks. Okay? Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS routine is what we're going for. So anyways, you'll see the time here and everything else, the language. You want to have it on your language. The whole reason we're in here is to do the very basics like time, date, language, boot priority. That's it. That's all we're doing. So we're just checking, making sure everything's good. I usually stay here for a minute or two, just double check my temperatures, make sure everything's working. Now I do feel and see all my fans spinning. And my motherboard temperature's at 24, which is good. Excuse me, if you want to go by Fahrenheit, 75.2. 104.0 on the CPU, that's fine. Everything else is working great. You got the CPU fan, which is our heatsink right here, running at 2600 RPM, and our chassis fan. Okay, our processor is running at 3500 megahertz, which is 3.5. 8,176 megabytes, DDR3, 1600 megahertz RAM. That is correct. 8,176 megabytes is 1 gigabyte. Here's our processor, BIOS version, so on and so forth. Anyways, so as far as changing the time. Alright, so our boot menu is correct. Alright, so now we're going to insert the Windows disk. So right now, I wanted you guys to see this. It's saying reboot and select proper boot device or insert boot media. Okay, so the reason I did this is so you can see. If you don't put in the CD and you have the boot order as CD, it won't boot. So that's why I mentioned earlier you have to change it back to boot from hard drive, which is where Windows is going to be installed. Wherever Windows, or the operating system rather, is installed is where you should be booting from, but only after you set up Windows for the first time. So I'm using my trusty little triple blade again to open all this up. There we go, and we got the Windows disk. It says read this first, registration is free, blah blah blah. I know about that, but you definitely want to read it if it's your first time. And we got Windows 7. 64-bit is what we're working with. Alright. So let's get this disk in. Here it is, Windows 7 Home Premium 64-bit. Open the CD drive and get that sucker in. And then press a key. So let's press a key. From now on, it's really step by step, nothing to fret about, very, very easy stuff. And as you can see right there, Windows is loading files. Now, I am not going to make you guys sit through this whole thing because installation of Windows can take up to 45 minutes and all you're going to see is the same screen. So where I am going to stop is where it begins the scan, and then from there you're just making an account name, password, following a step-by-step direction. A 5-year-old should be able to do it, so you'll be able to. There's no problem there, nothing to fear. Alright, we're starting Windows. Get you guys a little better view. Hopefully. There we go. Starting Windows 7.
Alright, so language to install, English. Time and currency format, English, United States. Keyboard, US, that's where we're at. Windows 7, install now. What to know before installing or repair your computer are the only choices, so we're going to do install now. Alright, here's where you agree to the terms. I'm a fast reader, watch this. Oh, done. Read and agreed. Alright, so what are we doing? Are we upgrading or are we doing custom? This is a little misleading because technically we don't want to, do anything custom, nor is it an upgrade. So in this case, we are going to custom, which is the advanced setting. And here, for example, if you had more than one hard drive, it would locate both of them. We only have one, so nothing advanced for us. We are selecting this one. Here it is. Now it's a 1 terabyte drive, but it only has 931.5 gigs of free space. That is correct. Your hard drive will not have the full capacity. If you click drive options, it'll, there's many options you could do, like load driver to make a new format and so forth. So nonetheless, here we go. And our one and only selection is where we want to install Windows. As you see right here, it says where do you want to install Windows? And we're clicking next. So here it is, here's the step where it's just going to go through and copy the files, expanding Windows, installing features, installing updates, and completing the installation. Now, I'm going to pause the video because, again, there's nothing for you to see here besides me sitting here staring at the same screen for the next anywhere from 10 to 45 minutes, depending on the computer's speed, depending on how the computer wants to react to you. It's having a good day or not. But I will continue the video once we are past the screen, once there is something else to see.